Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Just a brief introduction. Bevan is currently Director of Hope, Housing Opportunities, Partnerships, and Engagement for the city. Also, he's a member of the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee. Probably many of you remember when he was a supervisor from 2002 to 2011, at which point he was turned out. And he'll be talking about the impact of poverty and homelessness on members of the gay and lesbian community. So that's a beautiful introduction.
I love that. Thank you so much. Good morning. It's great to see everyone. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm so honored to be here, and have many friends that are Buddhists. And for many years I've admired the work of Jana Dreka, who I interact with, and she's very active in ministering and caring for the poor. And I have to admit, we see each other most frequently on Muni, so that's usually where we get to commune with one another. As was stated, I have the privilege of working for the city in a role addressing homelessness. And for 30 years, there have been advisors to mayors that have focused on this issue. And so when I went to see the mayor and he approached me about doing this work, I said that it was important to me that at 58 that I didn't want to be the director of losing, that when you say the word homeless, that it evokes in people things not working and someone or a family or some people being on the street, being disconnected and not succeeding. And so with a little bit of chutzpah, I asked to have a different title, one that was more aspirational, and I thought spoke to the goal of improving outcomes for people in any type of city housing. So we have shelters, we have supportive housing, we have public, and we have affordable housing. And I thought that I knew a fair amount about homelessness, having represented the Castro, and I'm proud of some of the work that I did. I worked with Stephen Tierney, that some of you know, to establish a housing program in one of the worst recessional times our city has had. We started a program at the Paramount Hotel, which is at 15th and Sanchez, and it continues 8 years later, and we have 20 young adults, LGBTQ young adults, that live at a very decent and in our community residential hotel. I also started a program at the library. When I was on the budget committee, the chief librarian of the city came and had a huge increase in security. And I sat with Luis and I said, I know that there are issues that you have. What are you trying to do? And I said, I certainly get the emails from constituents telling me that they're uncomfortable sometimes seeing people that are poor, seeing people washing their clothes in the basins, in the bathrooms. But what are you trying to achieve? And I said to him that one of the great things in San Francisco is we have baseline funding for our libraries. As you see, in fact, right now we're considering opening some branches on Sundays, which is great. So I said, you really have the opportunity to do something different. And so I asked him if he would consider hiring a social worker, because I said one of the things is that you can look at the downside, which is that you've got a lot of individuals that are homeless that come to the library to have a safe and sane place to be during the day. The upside is it's very difficult to case manage someone on the streets, to tell them that you're going to meet them at Turk and Taylor, and people rarely show up. I give people my card all the time. So to have people that are consistently going there, and that program started probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a model in the world. Libraries and public institutions around the world come to see it. And I think it also communicates differently when people aren't being greeted by a security officer, but they're being seen by someone who can help them connect to services. I think the thing that really surprised me is that as many of us as gay people have experienced San Francisco, and in many ways I can remember when marriage started, and I can remember how the sheriffs responded, and they helped facilitate the marriages for so many people, and they were so happy about it. And I remember how my straight friends felt about marriage and took a real pride in being a San Franciscan because of what was happening. And I have to say that I don't know that I was prepared to feel a year later in this job really angry at times and affected by the bigotry that I see towards poor people in San Francisco. And I think that there is particularly tremendous bigotry towards people that are homeless. And I can tell you that the systems that serve these people are among the most complex that our city has. And I assure you that if rich people needed a service from the city in order to be successful, that they would not tolerate the systems that poor people are faced with. So if you consider public housing, and if you read the newspaper, bless you, and you're aware that we've had a lot of controversy around public housing, and I've certainly been in the center of it, because from the day I took this job, I said that we can't succeed in responding to homeless without having one of the best public housing agencies in the country. And our conventional public housing waiting list has been closed since 2008. That means that anyone who wanted to apply for housing has been denied the opportunity since 2008. Our Section 8 waiting list, and some of you may know people or may receive Section 8, it's a voucher that you can use so that you only pay 30% of your income for housing. The Section 8 waiting list has been closed since 2001. It's 12 years. It's unbelievable. And the excuse is made that there are thousands of people on these lists. And I've worked hard over the past year to establish preferences that didn't exist before for homeless individuals and families living in SROs. You may know, but it's astounding to me how many families of 3, 4, and 5 people live in a single room in the Tenderloin. And it's very, very challenging. So I'm pleased that the mayor has responded, and that the individual who was leading that agency poorly, in my humble opinion, has left, and that there's a new commission and a new focus there. But it still remains daunting to see I recently was involved in trying to site a shelter in the Bayview. We have 4 resource centers in the city. One is known as Mother Brown's in the Bayview, then we have Glide, then we have MSC South, which is our largest shelter, and then just nearby here, we have the Mission Neighborhood Resource Center on Cap Street, 17th and Cap. So we, at the Bayview shelter, for the 10 years, we've had 50 individuals a night that sleep in chairs like the ones that some of us are sitting in right now. And as you can imagine, for people the ages of many of us in the room, that's very unhealthy. And many of the men have edemas and swellings as a result of sleeping for extended periods of time in chairs. And so we got a $1 million state grant to open a 100-bed shelter adjacent to this resource center where there are meals and case management. And the extent to which businesses in the neighborhood have been fighting this has really, again, I've been astounded. I mean, the Bayview has the second largest population of homeless individuals in San Francisco. To me, it seems to do a better job for these individuals to not have them have all the health complications that they have from sleeping in chairs. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you enable people to be more successful? And it's a wonderful program that's operated there, and clients and former clients who've become independent property owners, employed, successful individuals have gone to 3 community meetings. But the businesses in this neighborhood are hiring attorneys and intending to fight us every step in the way. And so that sort of, again, comes back to setting a moral compass for this city about the importance of serving people and stopping the statements that people make about the fact that helping people draws people here. I think that I have respect for people that are homeless or poor, and they understand. And to hear some of these individuals talk about the systems, I mean, they understand all of the things that don't make, the nuances of this system. They're not naive about this. I think people recognize this is a hugely difficult city to have housing in. It's a very expensive city. I'm sure many of you and your friends have experienced it, how difficult it is. I look at young people trying to, get a foothold in this city, and it's not what it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when we came to San Francisco, if we weren't born and raised here. And so I really feel that having individuals come from a humanist and a religious perspective to challenge people in how they speak about people and how they act. And so 3 weeks ago, I asked the Interfaith Council to hold a training, because oftentimes I see people asleep on church doorsteps, and I think, why is that? Why is it that the people that are inside this building, the people who've had a calling, see themselves as having the ability to connect with people and to set a spiritual goal? And why is that we see this disconnection? And so I just brought people together, and over 200 people came, which I was really pleased, and we just provided a toolbox and said, this is how you respond to a veteran, this is how you respond to a family, this is how you respond to a young person. These are the services, this is Homeward Bound. We've enabled 7,000 people to go home over the past 6 years, but we've made sure that they have meaningful connections. Definitely some of the challenges and some of the focus that you'll see is that we have individuals who are the highest users of multiple systems. It's why I've been an advocate for wet housing, which is a program that exists in Seattle, where people who are chronically addicted to alcohol have a place where they can drink safely, where they can live. And of the 75 people that live there, they basically went from the highest user of multiple systems down to the 75th person. And for 20% of the people, they cannot acquire alcohol on their own, and so they provide part of their benefit check, and a staff member gets them alcohol so they don't fall, so they don't hit their head and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the emergency room for a brain injury. And it was controversial in Seattle, but 6 years later, it's been proven to be a very effective harm reduction approach. And the studies by the Journal of American Public Health have shown that for the average resident of 1811 Eastlake, which you can Google and learn a tremendous amount about this program, the average resident reduced their alcohol consumption 40% in 6 months. On average, they went from 22 drinks a day to 12, which is certainly not a clean and sober environment. Even I know that. And but it was I've been there 3 times. I've taken the mayor, and I've run into some obstacles in trying to open the program. I thought we had a building that was coming online through the health department that we were going to be able to use, and that didn't work out. So I'm a bit at the drawing board. But there's sort of right now a prosecutorial effort to treat some of these individuals in jail, which isn't really my preference, because I feel that the housing approach is something that's so low barrier. You can go in with your friends and you can be there, and if your stove only stays on for 15 minutes, there's a button you have to push every 15 minutes to keep your stove on. There you can turn your faucets on and they will not overflow if they run all day. There's an intercom where someone can check on you if they haven't seen you, and they have 2 desk clerks, not 1, because someone's going to call and say Frank's passed out in the corridor and someone needs to help him get into his bed. And so it's staffed at a different level, and I feel that it's been enormously successful, and I sort of won't stop talking about it because it's an area in which there's an intersection between many of the advocates who don't like a judicial approach, and I share that. I can tell you again that putting poor people in the justice system, it takes no effort and no imagination at all. It's just it's astonishing, to see. And again, poverty and homelessness in our city is disproportionately African American. It's something that we as San Franciscans, and I think we as gay people, need to talk about, because this is a city that's not very welcoming to black people. And I happen to now go and speak to many of the technology companies that have populated the Central Market District, and I initially was very supportive of it. I saw those companies as coming and bringing the values, and they all want, virtually every one of these companies has put money up so that I can marry another man. But when I go and speak at these companies, I spoke at Zendesk. I guess it's ironic that that's the name, but I spoke at Zendesk, and probably 7 months ago, and it was in a beautiful conference room at 6th and Market, so obviously they're well aware of what's going on outside, and they asked me many questions about responding to mental illness and what were we doing and how are the police focusing on things. And I looked out after speaking for about 20 minutes, probably at this point, in my remarks, and I said, does anyone African American work here? And they said, no, not at the present time. And that was the first company that had structured a community benefits agreement. And some months later, the person who invited me, and I did comment that I thought that I might not be invited back, but the person who invited me ran up to me, Tiffany ran up to me in an event and she was very excited to tell me that they had hired their first black employee. And being a politician, it doesn't always mean I'm the most honest, and so I smiled broadly and said, that's just wonderful. And I said, I hope you'll cross my path and tell me about the second and third and fourth employees that you'll hire. My boyfriend worked at Square for 2 years, invested and is going to go do some things that I think are going to matter more to him. But Square is the little box on your iPhone, and you can, many people are small business people. That's how they pay. That's how they do their business transactions. And this company, Corey was the 74th employee 2+ years ago, and now there are almost 600 employees. He can only tell me of 2 African American employees that work there. I mean, seriously, many of us are the age that we remember all the things written about Jim Crow and all the things that we read about. And again, to be a little naive at 58, I look at this and think, how could this be possible? I mean, if you intended not to hire anyone black, could you be much more successful than to have 2 black employees out of 600? And people will look at me and say, oh, they're not individuals that are writing program or doing this. It's very difficult to recruit someone black that does that work. But let's be real, there are a lot of other people that work at these companies. There are people that do nothing but throw parties, right? There are people that do nothing but do promotional events or organize the food that's catered there, or are the caterers that come in there. And so I'm not very accepting of that, and I feel very strongly, and I won't stop talking about it until I see some different actions on the part of these companies, because I think it's fine to give money to some of the very good organizations that are working on this issue, but fundamentally there has to be opportunity for people, and I think that these companies need to be an example, and that they could do very much better at this. Maybe I should just conclude this portion and open it up to questions, to say that I am very pleased, and one of the things that working with Supervisor David Campos and many advocates in the community, we are going to be opening up a 24-bed LGBT-focused shelter. It's very nearby. It's at 21st and South Van Ness. There's been a shelter that Dolores Street Community Services has operated that has served 54 single men and largely day laborers. And Dolores Street also runs a Richard Cohen residence, and so they have a lot of LGBT individuals on their staff. And so there was space that came available, and some money was secured. There was a big gap, and I'm really pleased that I was able to get Swinnerton Builders to be the pro bono construction manager, and we've had fundraisers you may have seen at a number of different places, and so we're going to be starting construction. But on June 12th, there will be a community meeting at 1050 South Van Ness at 21st Street for community members to come out, neighbors and community members. And so I always welcome people of goodwill to come to these things, because the angry people come always, So, and I guess I don't know if anyone here saw the letters to the editor in the Chronicle yesterday, but there was a beautiful letter from a mother who lives in Elk Grove, and her daughter finished a business degree in San Francisco State and Gesundheit. And they had, I think maybe it was the Hertz Theater that they had the graduation, and then the family walked to Union Square. And, oftentimes, people don't think about things, and they were walking through the Tenderloin, and every block someone would say, you go girl, or they'd say, you must be a very proud mother, and just lovely things that were being said to them. And she said it was so different than the reception that she would have imagined from that neighborhood. And when they got closer to Union Square, no one said anything when they saw her daughter. And, I just say that to say that I just love that letter, because in a very simple way, it pointed out the depth of humanity that exists even among people who've experienced trauma and loss and very difficult situations. And I think that it's a healthy reminder for people not to judge that person as simply being on the street, but to know that's a person that's lived a life like we have. I'm all yours.
Mm-hmm. So, questions? Comments? Well,
yes.
Jay first.
Okay.
Hi, Jay.
More questions than you've got time for. But let's just start with this one. As you're aware, there's an awful lot of construction, housing along Market Street right now, and a lot of it seems purposely to use the word luxury in describing the kind of housing that is going to be there. I understand there's some sort of program where the developers of these places have to provide low-income
affordable housing.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
that?
So it's known as inclusionary housing, and Mark Leno started it. So I guess that would probably be around 99 or 2000. And so it's 15% inclusionary if it's on-site, 18% off-site. So you have to create that many units. So many of those projects that you see were entitled when I was a supervisor, and my advocacy was around on-site affordable as much as possible. So if you've seen the building that Brian Spears is building at Buchanan and Market, he actually acquired a building that is at Goff and Market, where it used to be kind of like a Brazilian restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a furniture store. That place hasn't lasted 2 years and whatever it's thought it's doing. But they're building now. So he's building an entire building that's going to be affordable that's there. So many of the projects are on site.
That's the one at 1600 Market.
Higher than that. 1600 is probably that address. Yes, you're right. That's the address of the all affordable. Yes. But most of these projects are going to have on-site affordable, which a question also leads me to is when I talked about the complexity, you can't apply one place for affordable housing. So you've got these units, you've also got developers such as nonprofit developers such as Mercy and Bridge and TNDC. And so all of these agencies maintain their own waiting lists. And it's daunting for people who, again, are not that successful in life to say, now you've got to go out and apply at all these different places. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to create a centralized access point where people could pick and say, well, I'm interested in these buildings that Mission Housing has and these buildings by Bridge. And again, there are lists and people understand that, but it would be a lot easier. But yes, definitely, the housing is condos. I got funding for the LGBT Center to try and do as much as we could to, and continue to do this work, to help younger people that want to try and purchase, to get their credit right, to get the loans and banking information, so that, because my hope is that we can anchor businesses and people in this housing that's being built that are, to anchor the queer community even in these higher end buildings. I will say in Vancouver, when they built, a lot of these tall towers were built in Vancouver, it did bring the prices down. And so I'm intrigued to see if that will happen, if as these projects come to market, because banks weren't lending for this purpose for many years, maybe it'll bring prices down a little bit if there's more opportunity. Bob, you had your hand up.
There was an article, maybe a month, 2 months ago in the Chronicle about a projected decrease in the homeless population due to aging out.
People dying.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you?
I don't want to be too stark, but I wasn't sure. You're no longer old after you're like 80. You hit something else.
The article suggests, which seemed reasonable, that a large part of the homeless population became homeless in the early years of the Reagan administration.
Yes, many of those individuals have passed on. But if you look at our shelter system, and my office has led what's called a shelter access work group, where we bring together clients and advocates and providers and city representatives to look at some of the problems of the shelter system. So the best you can do in a shelter is a 90-day stay. That's the primo that you're seeking. And you can access 90-day beds at these 4 resource centers that I described to you. Glide opens at 7 a.m. So if you've ever wondered why people gather at 3 in the morning in front of Glide, it's because it opens at 7, and your best shot at picking up a 90-day bed is there. Wow. And as our shelter population has become much sicker and older, it is wrong that we continue to focus on line-based systems. Yeah. And so one of the things that we've done, and I'm grateful that the mayor has included this in his budget, is that I advocated that we are able to use our 311 system. So someone could simply dial 311 and go into a lottery for a shelter bed. And one of our objectives is that homeless individuals said, I don't mind losing the lottery, but then if you can tell me how long it'll take to reach me. So if it's 2 weeks, then I could say, hey, Bob, I know I'm going to get a 90-day bed at MSC South. Could I stay on your sofa for 2 weeks? So it's just a very logical, thoughtful thing that any of us would understand, that you'd be more inclined to let me stay if you knew what was going to happen. So I'm very eager about that. But the numbers of people in shelter who cannot attend to what are known as ADLs, activities of daily living, they cannot get to the toilet by themselves, and it's very difficult. And shelter staff are individuals that generally are one step beyond homelessness, and so it's not really a good environment. We are working with the health department to step up some of the medical access at shelters for people, but we can't create a parallel system because right now, we had a $31 million budget gap with the health department, and there are huge tectonic shifts with the implementation of federal health care reform, even in a city like San Francisco that's had a health access program, which I'm very proud of. So you're absolutely right that the population of people who are older and sicker, but we do have an SF Hot homeless outreach team, and they do amazing work. They're awesome, wonderful people, and I try, and if any of you are restaurateurs, I'm always trying they have a weekly staff meeting I go to twice a month, and I'm always trying to bring food in to kind of show them some love. But our homeless outreach team, and you can use 311 to call and say, I'd like to have homeless outreach go and talk to someone. They went 24 hours a day starting January 1st. And in the first 3 months, we had 2,600 individual contacts with people. And of those individual contacts, of the 20 highest users of multiple systems, those are people who are costing hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million each. 6 of the top 20 have gone into housing in the first 3 months, which is a good sign, and very positive. But it's challenging. Our shelters are, with the exception of the one shelter, Providence in the Bayview, which the tea doesn't always run out there at night, and then you have to leave at 6:30 in the morning, and you sleep on a mat on the floor. So that's generally 80 to 90% full. But everything else in our shelter system of our 1,150 beds is 97 and 99% full. So, I want to assure you, it's not like, as much as many people will say to you, I won't go to shelter, the facts are that shelters are actually quite full. And so we don't, I'm looking forward to bringing these 24 LGBT beds. I'm looking for a miracle in the Bayview to get these, angry business owners to help, to let us open a shelter there as well, which would be 100 beds.
Can I ask just about the numbers? You said there's 1,150 beds
Yes.
in the city.
Yes.
What is the demand?
So the last homeless count, we have them every 2 years. The last homeless count was about, I think, 64 or 50 was the number of individuals who are counted as homeless in our city. So that includes people living in shelter. That includes people who are in jail that identify as homeless or as of general. So pretty much it's a snapshot to the best of our ability of individuals. So we just did a count in January, and we've not seen those numbers. So they're being verified and worked on, and so they've not come out. I was expecting them in March, but they haven't come out yet. So we'll see. I'm intrigued. I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers were higher. I'm not certain.
So it could be 4,000 or 5,000 people on the street, not on the bed.
Yes. Yeah. I would guess. I would guess the numbers are probably about 3,500 to 4,000. Potentially. Yeah.
Well, I'm a volunteer at the Housing Rights Committee,
Uh-huh.
and I work there twice a week. And we get so many calls from people that are facing eviction,
Yeah.
that are looking at being kicked out of their homes. And like you're saying, there's no central place to send anybody.
Right.
And what we have is like a 13-page
Referral guide.
brochure with maybe 100 different places, and they're all different, and most of them are too expensive for many of these people.
Yeah.
Most of their incomes are under what is needed to get in a lot of these houses. So I would say it should be a really high priority to get a master list or a system where someone can go and just find out what there is. I just think that's such a screaming need here.
It is. It's one of. I have 3 staff people that work with me, and the person, Amanda, who's my policy director, she is going to lead that, and she just had a baby, and so she's coming back. I've barely held on for the past 3 months, and she'll come back to me at the end of July, and so it's very high up. And your colleague at the Housing Rights Committee, Sarah Short, is a real hero to me, and she has been a real strong voice in the paper in ways that I haven't been able to speak out as much. I work behind the scenes more on the Housing Authority, and what a disgrace it was that they allowed someone to run that agency into the ground for years. One of the things that I'm working on with the Eviction Defense Collaborative and the Housing Rights Committee is to create what I call a therapeutic housing court. So as I'm sure what you experience is many clients are brought in, whether they live in public housing, affordable housing, or market housing, and they're drawn into the court system because of the inability to pay rent. And they wind up with a stipulated agreement, which is very specific as to what you have to do. And the minute, and they're pretty much recipes for failure, because obviously someone's had financial problems. I mean, they're not given a lottery ticket when they get this stipulated agreement, and so it becomes, in my opinion, sort of a fast track to evict people. And so I've been in discussion with the courts this year and said that to me, it's so difficult to obtain affordable housing that if you're in it, we should do everything humanly possible to help you be successful in that housing. And for some people, it means credit counseling and intervention. And we lost, Amanda and I applied for a Bloomberg Foundation grant to do financial empowerment work. And I won't be too political, but I'll say that our city treasurer, Jose Cisneros, who's a gay man, does amazing work. He's done Bank on San Francisco, which has banked 50,000 people who are using check cashing outlets. The average payday loan that someone gets at a check cashing outlet, for a $300 loan, you're paying $900 by the time you're done with it. And then Jose started a program called Kindergarten to College, where every entering kindergarten student for the last 2 years has gotten a college savings account as they've gotten there. And it's just unbelievable how that's changed. But Jose and I applied for this Bloomberg grant because in New York, they go into homeless shelters and into public housing to help people, get off of this debt. I'll try and do this in 30 seconds, but it's insane to me that all of us who have phones pay into Lifeline service, which is supposed to extend phone service to poor people. But in this modern society, they will not allow you to have a cell phone. And I went ape when I found that. And at the same time, their Lifeline account has a balance of $330 million. They're sitting on $330 million, and they will not move because they're so static and so they're afraid of, well, does the cell phone get service in every room in the domicile? I'm like, wait a minute, my clients don't have a domicile. They'll get great service. They'll get 5 bars all the time. And ultimately, one of the commissioners, Catherine Sandoval, told me that there was a federal program through the FCC, and still there'd been an application from Sprint to come into California and not take any of that $330 million. Leave all their gold in that room that they've got it in and use this federal benefit. And for 2 years, they refused to approve a Sprint application. So I got the Coalition on Homelessness. I got people from Glide. I started going to CPUC like I was chasing a man. I was in there all the time. And 2 months later, they approved us. And now we're in the thousands of these phones, Assurance phones and Nexus phones that are happening. So I do want to say to you that I've been having meetings with Housing Rights Committee, Eviction Defense Collaborative, and my interest is in creating a therapeutic process so that we wrap around the services to that individual or family that will keep them from being evicted. And I would tell you that since I tend to get the more difficult clients, at least 20% of the people I'm seeing have been evicted from somewhere. I mean, I had a black gentleman who was in front of the Church Street Safeway one Sunday night, and his legs were swollen up, and he used to live at 25 Sanchez, right there. And he got into a beef with the property manager, and he told her, something like, you're going to pay for what you're doing in a way that any of us might say if we had a bad day. And she wound up getting him evicted. And I had not seen him, but he'd been living around the neighborhood for 2 years, and I got him housed. But I'm totally with you. I think the eviction situation, right now there are 177 evictions pending for the Housing Authority. It's just unacceptable. Now, they're not proceeding on all of them, but it's ridiculous. People should be getting help. They should not be getting evicted. Yeah.
Well, I just want to follow up on that, but maybe for more detail. I read in the Bay Guardian a few weeks ago about a rash of evictions going on. I think most of it was like Ellis Act evictions. And I've lived in this apartment for 34 years, and so I have very reasonable rent, and that's the only way I can afford to live in San Francisco. If for some reason, and I'm a model tenant, but for some reason I got evicted, I wouldn't be homeless, but I would certainly have a much less quality of life trying to get a comfortable apartment. So I'm wondering, is this like a particular niche that you guys are looking at, about like elderly people who are being thrown out through the Ellis Act, and so all of a sudden they're faced with rents that are much higher than what they're paying before, and something you can't afford?
So the Ellis Act is a state law, and so in order to rescind it, it would have to happen at the state level, and there hasn't been the political will to do it. So Mark Leno, Tom Amiano, they've been advocates for repealing or modifying the Ellis Act, so that, but it's a state law that allows somebody to state or sign a paper that they're getting out of the rental business and totally vacating their building. And that was definitely a huge tool when I came on the Board of Supervisors, and certainly was not an expert in land use. You had people that worked in real estate or were in development who were going in, and again, 2-unit buildings were not in the condo lottery in this city, so you could go evict people and then go and apply to condo, and you wouldn't go into the lottery where, there are many thousands of people that have been waiting for a number of years. So one of the things that was changed was that we changed the city's laws so that if you had an Ellis Act eviction, that you would go basically to the bottom of the condo list, and that you would be so that your odds of condoing were very limited. But still, we have seen some larger buildings. So like a 7-unit building, for example, is not eligible for the condo lottery. And so you could have a 7-unit building where people would be evicted, and then they would be permanent TICs. So that's some of the push that's taken place now around giving people a better opportunity in the condo lottery, but if they do, backing up and saying that there would be no conversions for a certain period of time to make sure that the market doesn't get too hot.
So a building owner wouldn't be able to evict people until he knew for sure that he would get a condo?
No, it wouldn't work that way. They could still use, because we can't restrict the Ellis Act, but we could say that the city's condominium conversion process, that you are disadvantaged to the point of having no chance of converting to condo if you use the Ellis Act as the tool. But in some cases, in a larger building, again, that isn't eligible for the condo lottery, there are still efforts that have taken place. There's a building on Noe I can recall. There's a pretty building that I saw being painted, and I was happy to see. I was like, oh, wow, the building looks really beautiful. And it turned out they evicted everybody, and they turned them into permanent TICs. So it's complicated. I think the extent to which that you are a model tenant and that your landlord has good health and that you have some understanding, that's some of the best thing that you can do. It's very difficult. Yeah. Hey.
Hi. So I strive to live compassionately, and I certainly value equanimity. And I, through whatever force of the universe, became one of the haves. I encountered the have-nots all the time, and I grew up in the South, and I moved here 13 years ago now. And that whole time, I struggle every time I meet a homeless person on the street. I'd like to hear from you. I think I've actually asked you this question before at Squat and Gobble once. But from others in the room, when you encounter homeless people, often the first thing they want is a handout of money. Sometimes they have other needs. I just would love to hear some practical wisdom about what to do, because it happens every day, multiple times.
I guess you're making me feel very fortunate, because I just talked to a lady today on 24th Street, and I gave her my business card. So at some point, if you ever want to come by and get some of my business cards, you're welcome to give them to people. And because I wish more people would come and see me. So they're kind of two tracks. One's very personal, one's maybe more programmatic. So I'll go the programmatic route. Gavin Newsom started a program called Project Homeless Connect, which is, it's become an international model, and we're about to reach our 50th Project Homeless Connect. Will be on August 14th. And I think one of the best things to do would be if you could find a time and you can go to, I think it's phcsf.org, and if you could come to a Project Homeless Connect. And I would even tell you, as someone who worked in government, I was kind of nervous, like, well, what would I do? You know, what skill set would I have? And there are people that do intake, because everybody comes in and then they say, do they want dental? Do they want reading glasses? Do they want a health screening? You know, just simply a meal. You can check people off. There are people that are navigators, so when you go into this, you know, festival-style Bill Graham, you can take people around there. Right now we have over 300 individuals on the dental waiting list. You know, people are waiting because we've got a very inexpensive procedure to get dentures. There's not a dentist in this room, is there? If any of you know dentists, it happens at Temple Emmanuel has 14 dentists, so I'm all over them right now and trying to, you know, get services from them. But you can follow PHC on Twitter or Facebook, and they tell you of things that they need, and they've helped me get things for people. And so I think one of the best things is just to go someplace and to be present there and to experience. And so I used to think, like, oh, if I saw another celebrity at Glide or St. Anthony's, I would hurl, you know, it seems like, you know, and so I've always kind of like steered away from doing that. But then I just realized I'm just being cynical in some ways. Like, you know, they have to do what they have to do. And just going there and being at St. Anthony's, because the dining room is smaller now, they serve lunch from 10:30 to 2:30. And it's just a great, I don't know, it just was really good for me. It just put me in a better place as it relates to it, and I've had great experiences. There's Project Gubbio, which is at St. Boniface Church, and all they do is at 6 a.m. for people that have been on the street all night, they allow people to come and sleep in their pews from 6 a.m. till noon when their services start. So there are some really profoundly beautiful things that you can do and just make that human connection. And I think that the best thing to do is just to talk to someone and say, you know, how are you doing? Do you have housing? You know, what are you seeking? And then, you know, you're welcome to call me or to call 311, or you can tell them, you know, just to have a conversation with them. It's very complicated.
What about the money part? They're always asking for money.
I didn't used to give, and now, I mean, I did sometimes, but I would feel like, oh my God, you know, is this money going for drugs and alcohol? And the folks at Union Square, so when I came into this job, someone that had done this job before me, Gavin on a bad day had an idea about a parking meter that you would put up, and you could put money into it for homeless people rather than give them money. And it received the response that it did here, and was widely ridiculed. And so when the travel Union Square people and travel Union Square and somebody, and the hotel council, they sat with me and they wanted to do this, you know, education campaign about whether you should give or not. And I said, you know, this is so divisive. Like, you know, it's people's own money, and I understand that people shouldn't be aggressive and in your face. And God knows, my boyfriend seems to be a magnet for people going off on him. It's just interesting. I don't know why. It doesn't happen to me that much. I had a woman, my first month when I was taking the mayor's chief of staff through to see some things in the TL, she swore she was Janet Jackson, and I could not get her off of me. You know, it was just, and I wasn't really trying. I was trying, you know, I've like worked in this stuff. It was brutal. I mean, she was real, and they were all laughing on the street because they knew Janet was having a bad day and she was going to give it to me. But, you know, beyond that, it's kind of okay. And I do kind of give money now because it gives me an opportunity to talk to somebody. So today I gave a lady my card, but sometimes I give people money. And, you know, I've been working on Janice for years. If any of you know the lady that lives in front of Pottery Barn, I've been working for years, and she hates government. So one of the owners of Orphan Andy's has been my spy and gone and talked to her for years. And so, you know, so you just try. Some people, you know. But I think it's just, yeah, I kind of do. I give money. But Project Homeless Connect is a great way to do it as well. I'm sorry if that answer was too long.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time.
That's fabulous.
We're stretching it. If you can stay a little bit afterwards in our sort of social time, then people could ask you some further questions.
Well, I want to thank Bob for reaching out. His message to me was really beautiful, and we've had great connects in many different roles that we played. And so I want to say thank you very much for thinking enough of me to invite me here. And you know, I feel very fortunate to be, you know, to be at my stage of life, and to be alive, and to be able to work on something that matters. So, thanks.
Thank you so much. Well, do we have some announcements? Clint.
I have two. First of all, we're doing our annual Mount Tam GPF hike down Steep Ravine Trail. It's just a chance to get together and experience a beautiful nature place. And it's actually, as hikes go, this is relatively easy. It's about 5 or 6 miles. And you just go all downhill. And we cheat because beforehand we have a car parked in Stinson Beach so that we don't have to go back uphill. We can drive uphill. But we have, lunch at Sandal. It's a very pleasant day. It's going to happen this coming Saturday. I have flyers of all the information. So if that sounds appealing, contact me. Number two, this is perfect segue. We do have an outreach for the Larkin Street Youth Center, which is a homeless center for young people. And we've been doing this for quite a few years now, where once a month, the third Saturday of the month, we provide what we think is a really nice dinner. We do probably give them a fancy dinner they normally get. And it's a small gesture, but it's very well received. The kids there are great, and they're very appreciative. So if there's something that you feel like you want to participate in, because we buy the food, plan the menu, and cook the food in the kitchen there, contact me afterwards. I'll put together a volunteer team.
Somebody else? Jim?
Yes, next week we have another installment in our Dharma Duo program, and our speakers are going to be David Mkako, right there, great, and David Margolis. So we'll look forward to that.
Any others? Cass?
Hi, I'm your host today. Please stay and enjoy the fellowship of the Sangha. We have hot water for tea, and there are some cookies, all vegan. If you do have tea, please wash your cup with hot soapy water. I'll be coming around with the Dharma bowl and a suggested donation, $5 to $8 to help the Sangha meet its expenses. There's a sign-up list on the credential if you'd like to get added to the email list. And around 12:30, some people gather at the front door to go out to have lunch. It's open to anybody.
And remember, it's your job to find the Dharma bowl. Buddha said it. Buddha is watching.
It's like we pass it around, Cass, anyway?
I will, pardon me?
You will be passing.
I will be walking around. Thank you.
But yeah, find Cass.
The seat came out.
Yes. Just one other thing to follow up. The Housing Rights Committee is a really good organization that handles all this kind of homeless thing, plus problems with rent problems and evictions. And we're Monday through Thursday, 1 to 5, there's counseling hours. If you have any questions or you need to talk to a counselor, you can call up or you can come by. And I work there, and we get a lot of people in there.
Okay. If there are no other announcements, then we'll stand in a circle for a dedication. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.